How you doing, everybody? Greetings and welcome to today's episode of 8 Bits in the Basement. This is one of the most thrown together episodes I've ever made, and what I thought I'd do, because it's September and because it has become customary over the last few years for Tandy products to be featured during the month of September, because it some way rhymes with September Tandy and Septandy or Tandember or whatever the heck it's called, I decided I would make my own little video exploring this. Well, not exploring it, I've already looked at this. You can find videos I've made about upgrading memory, about turning yourself into a joystick, about flashing carts made by Mr. Dave 6309, about DriveWire, which is a fantastic thing to use with this system, and also about writing a little game about a hedgehog. I've done quite a bit with this computer, and the funny thing about it is that this computer has absolutely no retro anything for me. I didn't even know that Tandy existed as a computer manufacturer up until about 2 or 3 years ago, when RMC The Cave, or Retro Man Cave as it was known back then, made a video about the Model 1, the TRS-80 Model 1. And I had a look here in France, and this guy just happened to be for sale for the princely sum of €17 shipped. And I'm really glad that I took it. Not because they cost about 5 times that now, but because the system is one that I kind of fell in love with. Now, well, actually fell in love with is kind of strong, isn't it, really, for a man to say, I fell in love with this piece of plastic, fiberglass and silicone, is sick and wrong on so many levels. It is actually. We'll just say that I have a strong appreciation for this system. And the reason for it, I'm sure, is that Tandy and Radioshack catered to electronics hobbyists more so than anyone else. So the system that they put out there was one that could be modified, played around with, you could make your own hardware for it, you could experiment with it. And that's one of the things I would like to celebrate in this video. You can make up your own hardware for this, and using simple basic, you can get that hardware to speak to the actual computer itself. It's brilliant. You can really play around with these things. So in celebration of Tandember or Septandy or whatever the heck they're calling it, what we're going to do is we're going to make an Etch-a-sketch for the Radioshack TRS-80 Colour Computer 2. So let's do that right now. So this marvel of woodworking and electronics that you see before you is my Franken controller. This here is a guy I made up for the Coco years and years back when I didn't have any form of joystick for it at all. And to see how it works more or less, you can have a little look at a video I made years ago about making an Atari joystick converter for the Coco 2. I'll put a link to it. But this guy here is basically composed of 2 potentiometers. One here for the horizontal movement, and one here for the vertical movement of your sprite on screen. And a potentiometer is just this. Around one side, it's a knob that'll turn clockwise and counterclockwise. And it really works very much like a volume control on your TV. The more you turn it in one direction, the more current is let through, or the more voltage is let through, and the volume increases. And in the opposite direction, the voltage is diminished, and therefore the volume goes down. Pretty much exactly the same thing going on with the Coco. When you turn it to the right, the voltage goes up and it sends a little sprite off to the right of the screen. And to the left, the voltage is decreased and it sends the little sprite off to the left of the screen. The same thing is true of this particular potentiometer, but this one is working on the vertical axis. So you're moving the sprite up and down. Now, what a potentiometer is on the back of it is this little guy here with 3 little prongs on it, and these are wired kind of directly through to the Coco. And what we've got is we've got one prong that accepts 5 volts from the Coco, and one prong that's feeding back a voltage to the Coco. Now, what that voltage is, anywhere between 0 volts and 5 volts, depends on the position that that knob at the front of the potentiometer has been turned to. And that's pretty much how this guy will control a sprite on screen. Now, when I made this up, I also put a little fire button on it, and I put a little switch to toggle for auto fire as well. But it wasn't all that practical, really, to tell you the truth. It's very hard to control the sprite on screen using your 2 hands with these knobs and to press fire at the same time. But after I had made that video about the Atari joystick converter, Ken over at Canadian Retro Things, he left a comment saying that this looked an awful lot like an Etch-a-sketch. And to be honest with you, it does. So I thought for today's episode, what we'll do is we'll try and make this guy into an Etch-a-sketch and see exactly what that'll take to do it. And to be honest with you, this didn't take like any more than a half an hour to build. And I went looking to see about code, and the code I need is pretty much tailor written already in the using extended color basic book that came with the Coco 2. So let's have a little look at that code. So a quick little hunt in the Color Computer Archive brought me to this PDF of the extended color basic manual, and here on page 130 of it, it speaks of painting with joysticks. And this is pretty much an awful lot of the code that I lifted in order to write my own little basic Etch-a-sketch program. So here's the beginnings, and I kind of build on it as they go down through. And I pretty much lifted this code and threw it into a little program to try out with my Etch-a-sketch. Okay, so here is our basic code here in front of us. Some very simple enough lines that can easily enough be understood. But what we're doing is we're clearing the screen to a black color. That's what the CLS with a 0 in brackets is doing. All black screen to begin with. Then there are two kind of registers here on the Coco. There's joystick 0 and joystick 1. Whatever values are in those, we're going to assign them to H and V for horizontal and vertical, so that we can work with it a little bit easier. Here in line 40, what we're doing is we're setting V so that it can only ever be between 0 and 31. That's what that line does. Lines 50, 60 and 70 are to do with color, and they'll allow us to change color and whatnot if we have a joystick plugged into the second port. Now, I'm not going to be using a joystick in the second port, so these lines are here, but they're not actually going to be used in the program at all. Line 100 here is peaking this registry 65 to 80, and if that registry contains either the value 126 or 254, then that means that a joystick button has been pressed. And if that happens, if a joystick button is pressed, it'll jump down to 180. And what's happening in 180 is set, which is setting a color to the screen at a location. So it's taken the horizontal location, the vertical location, so those coordinates on screen, and it's sticking the color C into that. It's pretty much all that's happening. Loops back to 20 and we run through it again. So that is how our program runs. Now when we run it, here we are with our black screen. Here I am with my little Etch-a-sketch. So let's see, does this work at all? Hang on, I need to flick. Here we go. Look at it, look at this. We are able to draw a picture on screen. Look. Now remember, this is using very basic components and pretty much the code that came in the book that came with the Coco. So you tell me that this system wasn't made to be fooled around with by like electronics amateurs. That's a thing I really love about the Coco. Now, don't get me wrong, you can of course blow the system sky high by connecting stuff up to it any other way whatsoever, but this here shows that you can fool around and experiment with your Coco quite easily, and it's kind of wide open for you to do this stuff with. And the same is true of the Commodore 64, the VIC-20, also of the Amstrad, although I'm not sure that the Amstrad actually has a kind of a potentiometer set up inside of it. But an awful lot of computers you can do this with, but the Coco was made for this. Now, only one little thing, what I would like to do is a little bit of homage to the fact that this is a color computer. We're only looking at blue at the moment. What I would like to do is show you a little modification that I have made in order to make this guy much more colourdy. So what I'm after doing is I'm after rewriting this program here, but what it's doing this time is it's cycling through the colors instead of just having the blue color on screen. And what that'll do is, well, it looks to be just bright and blue there, but as we go through, depending on what color it was cycling through, it's kind of printing the color on screen as we go. Now, let's see if we can do an elephant this time. I've been trying to draw an elephant with this damn thing, and it's just completely mental. Like, oh look, that's what I was trying to draw, a tank. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've drawn something with my Etch-a-sketch at long last. A tank. There you go. So thanks for watching, and have fun with your Tandy stuff. And if you don't have a colour computer, what harm? There's VCC, Xroar, there's MAME, there's all kinds of emulators out there that let you fool around with really any old computer. And let septandy or tandember be a reminder to all of us that a man should never fall in love with a computer too much. But I really appreciate these colour computers. I really do. I really like this guy, which is funny because it's one of the computers I use the most, yet it's one that I never knew existed until very recently. But that being said, happy September to all of you. We'll talk to you all very soon, and take care and bye.